Welcome to Hope is Here. My name is Greg Horn, and I want to talk to you today about a wounded messenger and a weeping God. We are continuing our look at the book of Jeremiah this summer on Mondays and Tuesdays. We've been going through the book. We started 3 weeks ago, and Jeremiah is the longest book in the Bible. It contains more words than any other book in the Bible. Psalms actually has more verses, but Jeremiah has more words. Jesus was even mistaken for Jeremiah sometimes. In Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 and 14, it says, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" Well, they replied, some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, and others say Jeremiah or one of the other prophets. So obviously, Jeremiah was a great man of God that God used in a big, big way. The name of this series is called Broken and Hopeful, that we've been doing and will continue through August. And the reason we do that is because Jeremiah was called by God. And all of us, we're called by God for it's different things in different seasons I've found in my life, but we're all called to do something. It probably is not going to be full-time ministry, okay? But you know what? There's different things God calls us to do, whether it's to host a life group at our house or whether it's to start mentoring a young man or a young woman. Maybe it's start volunteering at your church in the children's ministry. There's just so many different things that God calls us to do for a season of life. Broken. Jeremiah was broken. His heart was broken. The people in Judah, they were broken. And yet I'm so thankful that we can always have hope because of Jesus. And Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." And man, I need to be reminded that we can always have hope because of God's faithfulness. And I'm thankful God put that word that word plan in Jeremiah 29:11 3 different times, because he knew sometimes my memory is short and I forget God's promises, and I can get into fear and worry and anxiety quicker than I'd like to admit. And so Jeremiah 29:11 has been one of my life verses for over 25 years now. But just if you've been kind of following along this summer, if you've been reading Jeremiah, I do want to give you kind of a disclaimer, all right? Jeremiah is not actually arranged in chronological order. A little historical context is, though, after King Solomon's death, the United Kingdom of Israel had split into northern and southern kingdoms. The northern kingdom was called Israel. The southern was Judah. Jeremiah was from Anathoth, 3 to 5 miles north of Jerusalem in the southern kingdom. This was a chaotic time, both politically, morally, and spiritually. As Babylon, Egypt, and Assyria battled for world supremacy, Judah found itself caught in the middle of this triangle. And that's one of the reasons I want to go through this book this summer, just like it was a chaotic time there in that country, politically, morally, and spiritually. I think we can agree it's kind of the same way in the United States right now, isn't it? And so I know there's a lot of things that we can relate to that Jeremiah was dealing with the people and in the area of the world where he lived. Jeremiah was a prophet who ministered under 5 different kings from 627 BC to 586 BC. The prophet Zephaniah actually preceded Jeremiah, and Habakkuk was Jeremiah's contemporary. You may be familiar with those books in the Bible also. I guess the best way maybe to understand Jeremiah now is maybe you remember Billy Graham when he was alive, that, he was kind of the pastor to the president for several decades. And that was kind of Jeremiah's role. And so he just had a lot of influence with the leaders at that time, all those kings. If you missed the first week, or a couple weeks ago, we started off in chapter 1. Just to recap it real quickly, we learned that Jeremiah shared with us that, God still speaks to his kids. We learned that he still loves to speak to us. We also learned that, hey, you're not an accident, and God has a plan for your life. And then we looked at the question, What kind of excuses are you giving to God to keep him from using you? Jeremiah was, hey, I'm too young. And yet a lot of us can say we're too young in the faith, or we're inexperienced, or some of us may say, hey, I'm too old. I always think about one of my heroes of the faith, Wally Rendell, the wonderful pastor here in central Kentucky, just a hero of mine, a mentor of mine, that he said, I heard him say actually on Hope is Here a couple of years ago, if you still got a pulse, you still got a purpose. And I want to remind you of that today, friends. And the question is asking God, what is that purpose for our one and only life, for this season of life? Then we looked at what is in our lives that need to change. All this kind of came out of chapter 1, that first program, a couple weeks ago. We talked about where do you need to stand up? Where do you need to maybe have a tough conversation with somebody that you've been putting off? What needs to end? God told Jeremiah there's some things that need to be uprooted, torn down, that were not God honoring there. So we asked the question, what in our own lives needs to be uprooted or torn down? And then last thing we looked at was what needs to be started in our lives or increased. We talked about having healthier habits. Maybe it's saying, you know what, I'm only going to have one Diet Coke a day, and I'm going to drink bottled water for the other meals throughout the day. Maybe it's saying, you know what, I'm not going to watch ESPN first thing in the morning. I'm going to listen to Hope is Here or watch it on the YouTube channel. I want to remind you that most of our programs are on the YouTube channel. Occasionally we have technical difficulties, so not all of our programs, but a majority of them are on there. Then we looked at next in chapter 2. Okay, we looked at what we use to fill that God-sized shaped hole in our hearts that only He can fill. And then last week we looked at false religion versus true worship. And we said that real worship reforms our relationships and lifestyle. True worship flows from a heart transformed by God, committed to justice, mercy, and obedience. And we said, hey, friends, let's just don't go to church on Sundays. Let's be the church. Let's be a light in the darkness in central Kentucky. So if you missed any of these programs on Monday or Tuesday the past 3 weeks, I want to encourage you to go to our YouTube channel. It's simply Gardenside Christian Church. Or if you're not in a place where you can watch, you can just say, hey, I want to catch those podcasts. You can listen to the YouTube ones, but we also have, know a lot of people like to listen to podcasts as they're exercising in the summer. You can go to our website, hopeisheretoday.org. That's hopeisheretoday.org, and catch all of our programs. Also, I want to let you know we're on all the platforms where podcasts are listened to, so I hope you'll subscribe to that. I want to remind you, too, that each summer we've been blessed to have a partner that's really been blessed by this ministry, that they are willing to match all gifts in July and August up through August 31st, up to $10,000. And so if you decide to say, hey, you know what, I want to give a $100 donation to Hope is Here, I've been blessed this year by that, that becomes $200. And so just no donations too small. And so just hope if you've been blessed, you'll go to our website, hopeisheretoday.org. There's a mailing address if you prefer to write a check, or you can give an online donation. It's safe and secure. And the best part is all of these donations are tax deductible. Well, we're going to look at chapter 8, verses 18 through chapter 9, verse 1 today, only looking at 13 verses. But if you've got your Bible, you can turn to that. And while you're doing that, I'll just say a little background is that there was just heartbreak of God over the sin and suffering His people. And this was being expressed through the grief of His prophet Jeremiah. He was just really hurting. And as we read these 13 verses, we'll see that God is not distant and that He actually weeps over our brokenness, friends. All right, let's jump into Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 18. It says, Jeremiah says, my grief is beyond healing. My heart is broken. Listen to the weeping of my people. It can be heard all across the land. Has the Lord abandoned Jerusalem, the people ask? Is her king no longer there? Oh, why have they provoked my anger with their carved idols and their worthless foreign gods, says the Lord. The harvest is finished and the summer is gone. The people cry, yet we are not saved. I hurt with the hurt of my people, and I mourn and am overcome with grief. Is there no medicine in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why is there no healing for the wounds of my people? If only my head were a pool of water and my eyes a fountain of tears. I would weep day and night for all my people who have been slaughtered. As we conclude today's program, we only got about 4 minutes left. I'm going to look at 3 things, but today we'll just get through the first one. I think there's 3 things that at least I learned from looking at these 13 verses, and I want to share the first one with you today in the time we have remaining, is that we saw a prophet who was in pain. I mean, Jeremiah just flat lays it out there. In Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 18, he says, my grief is beyond healing. My heart is broken. Friends, those are strong words. Most men, if they're hurting, you'll say, hey, man, you okay? Like, oh, man, I'm all right. Hey, seriously, are you okay? Oh, no, I'm good. Most of us guys don't like to admit that we're hurting. Jeremiah, man, he doesn't hold back. He makes himself completely vulnerable when he says, my grief is beyond healing. My heart is broken. Friends, that's somebody that knows some pain right there. I mean, here's the deal, though. Jeremiah, he feels what God feels, and he's not just some distant prophet or preacher, but he is a broken-hearted intercessor for the people in Judah. I want to ask you, have you ever tried to help someone with your time, giving them some of your valuable time, lending a listening ear to them? You made sacrifices over and over, and you've even given financially of the resources God's entrusted you with, but yet they still to continue making unwise decisions. And, eventually, man, it just leads to tears as you just get just exhausted mentally and emotionally and physically just from the brokenness in their life. And, that's just kind of where he was. I mean, Jeremiah just was so hurting for the people. He had pleaded with them over and over to turn from your ways, the ways that are worshiping idols, your evil and wicked ways, and just giving in to sin, and yet they wouldn't listen to him. And here's what I've learned, friends. The closer that you walk with God, the more your heart breaks for what breaks God's. Say that again. The closer you walk with God, the more that your heart will break for what breaks God's heart. I love that song called Hosanna. It's written by Hillsong, I believe. No, it's my version of hearing it performed I like the best. And there's a chorus in there that really just speaks to this. It says, heal my heart and make it clean. Open up my eyes to the things unseen. Show me how to love like you have loved me. Break my heart for what breaks yours. I love it, friends, that God will heal our heart. He'll make it clean, make it white as snow. I love that as we seek God with all our heart, mind, soul, he opens our eyes to things unseen, and it's so powerful, friends, and that he will show us how to love like he does. And then as we get to know God more and have an intimate relationship with Jesus, man, our heart breaks for the things that breaks his, and that's where Jeremiah was. And, I think that a lot of us, if we're honest, we're just not really burdened over the spiritual condition of others. And I got to just ask you, have you grown numb? It's easy to do that, and I think one of the reasons we do that is because we get offended so easily. I saw this powerful talk by Ryan Clibb, just a short video clip, by Ryan Leak, L-E-A-K, and he spoke at the Leadership Summit Conference a couple years ago, and since then I've been following him on social media, and he just gave a great example about getting offended by a waiter at a restaurant, and it just so resonated with me that, and then he turned it around, did not let the guy offend him, and gave an unbelievably generous tip. And he just talked about it that, we can't let people offend us. We need to set the temperature, and that's what he did. And he said, the only reason I can do that is because I'm a follower of Jesus. Well, unfortunately, out of time, but I hope you'll join us again tomorrow as we continue looking at the book of Jeremiah and Wounded Messenger, Wounded Weeping God on Hope is Here.